99.7 Viagra. Get my microphone in the proper position here as we get the show lumbering under its own weight. We're happy to have you with us. Whatever time you're able to give us, we're certainly appreciative of that. Let's give you some of the pleasantries, and then we'll get on to subject matter, which is of importance to you. Or at least I hope that it will entertain you over the next hour or so, or however much time you're able to give us. It's episode 463 of these proceedings on a day-to-day basis, Monday through Friday from noon until 3. It's Tuesday, November 28th, 2023. It feels like it should be December already, and we still have 3 more days of November. We got today and tomorrow and, what is that, Thursday? And then finally, it's December 1 on Friday. Those early Thanksgivings always mess with me. It is, as I mentioned, Tuesday afternoon. Lots going on today. We've got Senator Marsha Blackburn coming up in the 2 o'clock hour. We have Representative Scott Cepicky stopping by to give his thoughts on the Education Scholarship Program, as they're calling it, from Governor Bill Lee's office. Governor Bill Lee expected to speak today in Nashville, Tennessee at 2 o'clock, as a matter of fact. And if we do not carry that for you live, we will certainly carry it for you with a slight delay, because I've got a bit of overlap with Senator Marsha Blackburn coming on at 2:05 and the governor's remarks at 2 o'clock straight up. And so I was talking with Mac Morey earlier from back in the newsroom, and Morey will roll tape, as they say, on the governor's remarks, and then at some point we will play those remarks for you. They're not expected to be lengthy. He is announcing the Education Scholarship Program that would expand what is commonly known as the voucher system in the state of Tennessee. We talked about it much yesterday. I mean, for the majority of the show, I had a discussion going on with parents and taxpayers alike as to where we should go with that, and we will continue that discussion later on this afternoon. That announcement, once again, at 2 p.m. I do have an update regarding the quote-unquote cessation of hostilities in Gaza. I think it behooves us, as much as I know you already for the most part know this, I think it behooves us to remind ourselves and just to galvanize it for those who might have missed it. There is one aggressor in this conflict, and that aggressor is Hamas. There is one entity that is responsible for the death that is currently going on in Gaza and the surrounding region, and that is Hamas. There is one organization that broke a ceasefire that was fairly long-standing in that region, and that is Hamas. There is one organization that has wasted its opportunity to lead and to govern its people since 2006. And that's Hamas. There's one group of individuals who do not care about civilian death. That's Hamas. There's one group that uses human beings as human shields. That's Hamas. It's one group that hides their military armament and their military operations underneath hospitals and old folks' homes. That's Hamas. And there's one reason that any and all of this violence is going on, and that's Hamas. It bears repeating, and it bears a reminder that, sadly, the world, in its desperate attempt to create some semblance of moral equivalency, covers up the evils of that organization that is terrorist in nature. And so, in an abundance of effort to get their and our hostages back, the state of Israel agreed to a cessation of hostility for a period of 4 days. And you may have been told by now, and if not, here's news. Hamas has broken that agreement by bombing. By bombing. And it does not seem as if the mainstream media cares. They don't care. Had the roles been reversed and the state of Israel broken the quote-unquote ceasefire, one would expect that the mainstream media would care. Because, and I don't even know that they want to present Hamas as a force of positivity or good, but they certainly want to create some sort of moral equivalency where none exists. Hamas exists for the purpose of destroying Israel. and retaking that land. Land that was granted to Israel by the United Nations in 1947 and 48 and was ultimately taken over because a civil war broke out after that declaration within the United Nations. And you can look up the history. I'm not here to give you a history lesson. Civil war broke out in that region, and ultimately Israel was the victors of that conflict at that time. But this was after the United Nations had made the determination that post-World War II, that the Jews needed and deserved a place to go to call their homeland. The world was fairly united in that effort in 1948. And I understand those displaced in the Muslim community were not happy about it. But to claim that they are colonized in some fashion as a result of that is an ignorance of history. But the moral equivalency effort continues on the part of the mainstream media. We'll discuss it on the show today. I'll tell you, there is a story that made the rounds last night that I was reading about regarding a young Russian citizen who was in Israel. I guess he was a part of the festival, the music festival that was going on over there. His name is Ron Kovol, and he was released in the hostage exchange as a result of the agreement to, you call it a ceasefire, a pause in the engagement. He had previously escaped imprisonment and survived for several days in the rubble of Gaza. Not knowing how to get out of that region, he tried to get to the border, and according to his aunt, who spoke about his struggle, Ron Kovol, who was a Russian national, tried to get to the border but did not have the capacity to understand where he was or where he needed to go. He left Gaza as a part of the third group released as a part of this ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas, brokered in Qatar. Both parties agreed to extend that ceasefire by 2 days, conditional on the release of more hostages. However, Hamas has already broken that ceasefire agreement. The 25-year-old was working at the Supernova Festival on October 7th as a sound tech when Hamas terrorists attacked. Russian President Vladimir Putin requested Hamas include Kovoli in the second round of released hostages as a part of a separate deal. Kovoli's aunt claimed that he had not remained in prison the entire time. He had briefly escaped and survived for 4 days in the ruins of the Gaza Strip. She explained that Hamas kept him in a residential building during his imprisonment, but the Israeli Defense Force bombing had collapsed part of the building, which allowed him to escape. He remained on the run for 4 days. But here's what I'm keying in on. Locals managed to locate and capture him, and then they handed him over to Hamas terrorists. Now, why would they do that? There's really only two reasons that I can think of as to why these Palestinians that we are told are innocent civilians, I mean, almost universally in American media, we are reminded repeatedly that the Palestinians are innocent in all of this. They have nothing to do with all of this. They don't want war. They don't want violence. They don't want to kill people or see people killed. They're not necessarily anti-Semitic, right? Yet over and over and over again, not just in that part of the world, but here in the United States of America, they reveal themselves to us, despite what the mainstream media wants us to believe. They are most certainly anti-Israel. They are most certainly anti-Jewish. And I would suggest to you, as I've been saying since the beginning of this conflict and the aftermath of the October 7th massacre, that we either believe this nonsense narrative that we're being fed by the mainstream media organizations or we don't. And the narrative is simple, that the Palestinians are innocent, they're caught in the crossfire, they want none of this. Well, if that is the case, why are they not looking at the IDF as liberators, removing from their midst the terrorist organization that has controlled their very lives since 2006? The only reason that they would turn someone over to Hamas is that they either support the effort that Hamas is currently engaged in or they are petrified of them. Either way, we're not getting the proper narrative. So that's on my mind today, and we'll discuss that a little more at length as the program goes on. You're welcome to be a part of the show at any point during the proceedings. 615-737-9986. 615-737-WWTN. Is 4317 honestly trying to help me pronounce Qatar? It's Qatar or Qatar. I've heard it both ways, and I'm not going to get into that fight with anyone. If you want to fight me, bro, just give me a call. In fact, I will get in a fight with you about it. I've always said Qatar. I understand that some say Qatar. If it bothers you that much, I don't know what to tell you, because I can't promise you that I'll go with Qatar. No sane person says Qatar. Well, you got that right, 4317. Congratulations. You're on it. Hey, Mason's behind the glass in the absence of Bell K, making sure that everything that comes out of our speaker sounds as good as humanly possible. Good afternoon, Mason.
Good afternoon, Matt. How you doing?
I'm pretty good. You?
I'm doing all right. Running a little behind this morning.
It's all good. You look great.
Made it here on time. I appreciate it.
I mean, you look. I got my sheet. I got. I mean, you've got all your
job.
You've got all your duties taken care of.
Yeah.
Good for you. Everything going well?
Yeah, it went well. How was that? How did that last time?
Oh, it sounded great.
Perfect.
I thought it sounded. I mean, it made me sound insane. Like
just a little bit.
You know.
I mean, but
crazy.
It kind of fit the vibe of what we talked about yesterday.
I think so too. Yeah, I dug it. You can make Mason's life a veritable living hell by giving us a call at 615-737-9986. If you do that all at once, if you get all of the phone lines ringing all at once, it will absolutely freak him out.
We prefer 6 lines, but we have 12 to fill if you guys want to call.
Yeah, if you want to get in on that, you're welcome. You can also join us on the Super Talk television side of things. Obviously, we've got internet streaming up and running. That internet stream can be found anywhere where you stream audio or information. You simply go to your streaming platform, you type in Supertalk 99.7 WTN, you'll find us, you download us, or you put us up on the stream, and we're there. You can also download our app and stream in that fashion, and you can find us on Supertalk TV. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch on Supertalk TV. You're invited to be a part of that. F&M Bank chat line is up and running there as well. That chat line, by the way, several people have asked me, when the Supertalk television aspect of what we are doing was layered on top of the already extreme duties of the producers that sit in the other room. The producers in the other room are responsible for all of the audio. They're responsible for all of the commercial advertisements that play on the radio station. They're responsible for the host and getting us from point A to point B, which is like wrangling cats. They're responsible for timing. They're responsible for screening your telephone calls as they come in. They're responsible for the internet stream. They're responsible for the audio stream. They're responsible for everything that comes out of the speakers, which is why I say that, without them, none of this would work. I mean, that's obvious. But then on top of that, they're now responsible for their duties on Supertalk TV. Now, in a perfect world, there would be a separate human being running all of that, right? But they have social media responsibilities. They have internet streaming responsibilities. They have radio responsibilities. They have telephone responsibilities. They have producer responsibilities. And on top of that, they've got Supertalk TV. So several of you have asked me, and I've never commented on this, but I think it merits comment. The F&M Bank chat line, it is largely unmonitored. So occasionally you will see trolls on the chat line. Trust me, on the super text line, there are trolls galore, and we ignore them for the most part. But on Supertalk TV, you can't avoid some of the trolls. There's been a lot of anti-Semitic commentary on there, a lot of anti-Jewish commentary on there of late. So it is what it is. One of these days, maybe we'll have the means by which someone can monitor that and exclude those comments that are inflammatory or untoward or unrepresentative of what we do on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. But you know what? It's a freedom of speech issue, and right now we prefer to allow the comments to continue as opposed to allowing the minority and the trolls to eliminate that portion of the Super Talk TV broadcast.
Absolutely. And when I work on any of the plethora of shows that we have on this station, I always try to monitor and make sure it's kept to the topic. And like we've had random people who will just go on a swearing storm over there. And
yeah, because they think that's cute.
Yeah. And it's like, that's not needed. It's not related to the topic. I try and see if there's a way I can remove it. And I have removed a couple comments in the past, but it's because we're doing so much back here, it's hard to catch them all. So
now we have people on the super text line offering to be moderators.
That would be interesting.
You know, at such time that we would like to make the situation worse, I think we would take them up on that, right?
It'd be interesting. I'd be happy to do it. I'm already here.
You've got enough going on in there.
I mean, yeah, but I'm not here all the time.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, I like that
See?
idea. Yeah, just, come on in. Ernie says, Matt, you're not insane. However, you could stand a tune-up. You got that right. That is that's the truth. 8335 says, I'm not a troll. I'm a wiseacre. Well, you're our kind of wiseacre, and I appreciate that, buddy. You sure those are trolls? Yes. I call them rando and non-trolls. You deal with them a lot on social media. You deal with them quite a bit on X, formerly known as Twitter. You to a less degree on Facebook and some of the other media platforms that I find myself on. But any place where people can anonymously comment, you will have anon-rando trolls is what I call them. And I made a decision a long time ago that if you're anonymous on social media, I'm not taking you seriously. Like, you might think I'm taking you seriously, and I might respond to you in a serious fashion, but understand something. Underlying all of that, I'm not taking any of this seriously because I don't know who the hell you are. I don't know what your motivation is. If you're not willing to identify yourself and engage in that fashion, then you mean nothing to me. Nothing to me. And I think if everyone took up this attitude of detached amusement from the rando and on trolls on social media would become an eminently better place because when they go off and they start being all trolly, you laugh at them or ignore them. You don't take them seriously. Come on now.
Just got a comment on the Super Talk TV. It said, identify yourself, fart eaters.
That's the kind of thing.
That's
I'm
great.
talking. That's the entertainment that I've come here for. It's 12:22 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Why is there such a great push? This might not seem like a serious topic, but on Libertarian Lunchtime Hour, I can talk about anything about. Well, I can do that any time during my 3 hours of the day. But why is there such a push to bring back cursive writing? Now, there was a story the other day, and maybe you can call it an absence of real news as to why they gravitate to these types of stories. There was a story the other day as to how we need to bring back cursive in American schools.
What benefit does it bring?
That's my question.
It's like the only thing I ever use it for is for my subpar signature on the occasional item.
And I don't even, you know what I do? I draw pictures. I'm
Doing
not kidding.
hieroglyphics?
No, I do like little random. Look, this is my signature is something like this. It's like I'll do something like that. It looks like Arabic.
Here, hold it up to the camera a little more. I want to make sure I can copy that for other things.
Yeah. If you do that, no, and sometimes I give it one of these. I give it one of those.
Oh yeah,
That gets me into trouble with the wife. And I give it one of those. One way or the other, cursive back in our schools. We'll talk about it coming up in just a couple of minutes. Plus, I suppose you've seen the story about the young man in attendance at a Kansas City Chiefs game that is now being blasted on social media for being in quote-unquote blackface. We will discuss that. In the meantime, there is a service that is honoring the former First Lady Rosalind Carter, and I'll reflect on that in just a moment. It's 12:24 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. You know, when USS, that's United Structural Systems, comes to your house, you're getting problem solvers who provide peace of mind to their customers, the homeowner. You're not only getting someone who cares about your home and cares about results, but you're also not, and this is important as well, you're not getting someone that's interested in sales quotas or upselling the next big item. The only measure of success that they have at United Structural Systems, how satisfied you are and what level of peace of mind they're giving you in solving the issue that exists in your home. Bottom line, we don't know what's going on in your house until we examine it. And at USS, that's exactly what they want to do. So if you've seen any signs, maybe you smell musty smells in the basement, that's unusable space. Maybe you believe that you want to find out more about water encapsulation, which is a great product provided by United Structural Systems. Perhaps it's a foundation issue, or maybe it's concrete leveling with a polylevel lift system. They can do it all at United Structural Systems, but their measure of success, once again, is your satisfaction and your peace of mind. And they have over 25,000 satisfied customers in Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, and Northern Alabama. Call them today at 615-488-7855, 488-7855, or USSTN.com. USS, they guarantee their best. Once again, USSTN.com.
Specifically regarding Precision Ag, this is a movement or an initiative that Pheasants and Quail Forever is taking on where we can help farmers take advantage of the data they collect and during harvest, during planting season, and use that to identify areas in the field that are underproducing for whatever reason. Maybe it's shade, water, there's perennial wet spots, odd areas that are just hard to farm. Farm equipment's getting big now, and it's hard to farm some of these smaller areas. And so these areas that the yield isn't high enough to exceed the input costs, we're losing money on those acres. So
Gotcha.
Are there some alternate land use covers, wildlife covers that we can use and put on the ground that benefit wildlife but also benefit the bottom line? There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of conservation programs and conservation practices out there that can benefit the land, and they require management. And so some people might be familiar with the Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP.
Yeah.
And that is a program administered by USDA for farmers and landowners to take those certain areas out of production and return them to a wildlife cover beneficial to different wildlife.
We started taking non-productive acres years ago and putting them in CRP, and seeing a great benefit of that, not only for wildlife, but erosion control and the money side of it. You know, we have to make a living to stay in business just like everybody else. You know, if you've got non-productive acres that you're losing money on, and you can get something out of them, plus benefit the soil from erosion, plus benefit the wildlife,
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the Matt Murphy Show in progress, 12:29, almost 12:30. Little bit lengthy in that first segment of the show. That's going to compress this segment. My apologies. I can't make time. Join us on Super Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. We appreciate you there. I've got to stop hunching. I was watching myself a minute ago. I know I hunch too much. I almost said something that I thought would be funny, and then I believe it or not, I can monitor.
You can restrain yourself?
I can restrain myself. I can monitor myself from time to time. By the way, another Super Talk live event. It's our Super Talk 99.7 WTN Christmas party, Thursday, December 7th, from 4 until 8 at Scoreboard at Cedar Creek. That is like a week. That's 2 weeks. What is that? A week from this Thursday.
Yeah.
A week from this Thursday. I like Scoreboard at Cedar Creek Marina. It's a great event venue. It's a great place to hang out. The last time I was out there, I pulled into the driveway at Cedar Creek. This is like a month ago, maybe less, and there's like 28 deers.
Wow.
Running. I mean, there's a lot of deer.
Yeah.
Like right outside of the marina. It's pretty cool to see. And they're just standing around like, what's up? How's it going?
Nothing new.
Got any corn?
Nothing new for them.
All right. We'll be talking about the year that we leave behind, the year that is ahead. Join myself, Chris Hand, Dan Mandis, and Brian Wilson from 4 until 8. Broadcasting live. It is absolutely free. No cost to you. It is free to you and free to me. 997WTN.com. That's 997WTN.com. When we return, I will make my declarative statement that cursive writing is dumb. And I don't see any benefit in it. And I don't understand why there has been a push recently. It's almost an annual event, though. I looked this up just to confirm it in my mind. Like, for example, just a week or so ago, article, Cursive Writing in American Schools. Here's where this dying art is still taught and why it matters. A year ago, New Hampshire considering mandatory new curriculum for schools, which would include cursive. 9 years ago, Nevada lawmakers wants all students to learn cursive handwriting by the end of 3rd grade. 7 years ago, flip the script. Cursive sees revival in school instruction. 6 years ago, new Indiana law ensures schools may teach cursive writing. And on and on and on it goes. And I don't understand for the life of me what we consider to be the benefit of cursive writing. But I am willing to learn. 615-737-9986. It's the Libertarian Lunch on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Jeff Eddy, Sufficient Heating and Cooling of Tennessee, has the best value going when it comes to maintaining your heating unit. If you've not already done so, there's still time to do it. And you'll never pay over $125. Now, that's for a residence, and that's no matter how many heating units you might have. No matter how many you've got, they'll maintenance all of them. They'll check them all out, make sure that they're going to run efficiently through the month of December, through January, through February, through the wintertime, with efficient heating and cooling. You know, it's hard to find someone that you can trust in that industry, and I don't know why that is, but it is true. You know, it's because we don't understand what's going on in our heating unit. We don't understand what might be wrong and what might be, what might be fixable and what is not fixable. Well, Jeff Eddy will tell you the truth when it comes to your unit. If you can get another year out of that thing, he'll tell you. If he believes that it's costing you money from an energy perspective, he'll tell you. If it's time to replace it, he'll tell you that too. And Efficient offers they offer free financing on your next unit, and they are a Diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric and Elite Pro partner with Rheem. EfficientHVAC.net is the website, efficienthvac.net, or call 615-784-4424, 784-4424 for Efficient. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Matt Murphy and you. Hope your lunchtime hour is going well. We're here till 3 o'clock. We'll hand off to The Drive with Brian Wilson at that time. Information-fueled and opinion-driven news talk radio, live and local, starting early in the morning at 5 a.m., long before I wake up, with Nashville's Morning News, Dan Mandis and the gang. Then there's Chris Hand until noon. I crank it up and last until about 3 o'clock and hand off to The Drive with Brian Wilson, who is here until 11 at 7 p.m. tonight. Thank you for being with us. Yeah, I've already been admonished. There's been a finger wag on the super text line regarding my pronunciation of the country of Qatar, which I've always called Qatar. And now people are laughing at me because I said deers. I say deers intentionally because I think it's funny. I know that it's deer, but that's not nearly as fun as talking about all the many deers that I saw out at the Cedar Creek Marina. Isn't that more fun?
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt them. They
No,
don't know any better.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care one bit. I had an up close and in person experience with the deer, 2 deers, matter of fact, little baby deers.
Oh.
At the in-laws over the Thanksgiving holiday. Apparently, they're feeding the baby deers behind their house now.
Interesting.
And so I went out to, they have a pool, and I went out to the old pool house, and I looked around the pool house, and I thought I was looking at one in the distance, and there was one like right there.
Did you jump
it's
at all?
odd. It's odd because I think I was as scared as it was of me, but nobody ran. Everybody just stared at one another for a minute, and I just kind of, the tail kept flicking. And I just kind of faded off into the background, you know. Anyway, cursive writing. What is the benefit of? I don't write in cursive. I never have, except when I was in school and I was forced to. The only thing that I do in cursive is my signature. If I tried to, and I have in the past, we've run this experiment where. Have you tried to write in cursive lately?
No.
It
I mean, only practicing a signature. Yeah,
it
it's
does
the only
not
time I ever use
does not give you any level of confidence.
Oh, I bet not.
I mean, if you try to legit write a sentence in cursive, for me it comes out looking like a 9-year-old wrote it. It's embarrassing. But I mean, I might as well try to do it with my left hand, and I'm right-handed.
I'm left-handed, and I still write terribly.
That's bad.
Yeah, it's rough.
And I don't understand what the benefit of cursive writing is yet on almost an annual basis. And I did a little research on this, and I can show you story after story after story after story over the years. In Indiana, they wanted to require teaching cursive writing in schools. Indiana lawmakers were considering a push to require the teaching of cursive writing by the state school system. Parents and lawmakers fear cursing becoming a lost art. That was 8 years ago. Texas to require elementary school students to learn how to write in cursive. That was 5 years ago. California, among few states clinging to pen as cursive writing is erased from curriculum. That was 8 years ago. And on and on and on it goes.
I did just get an interesting tip from the lovely Chris Hand.
Mm-hmm.
He pointed out cursive is the only thing AI can't read yet, which I think is interesting. Now, I think it depends on how squished and how, well written out it is, I guess. Might make it difficult for a program to read.
But who cares?
I mean, yeah, that's fair. Maybe we're passing notes so the Terminators can't read our secret battle plans.
I mean, but because we don't use penman. I mean, I'm not dismissing what Hand said. I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, that the artificial intelligence currently cannot read
cursive handwriting. Yeah.
Wait, can they read block letters?
Yeah. I've seen it. Like, you take a picture of someone's writing from text and block letters, and then it transcribes it onto
I'm not doubting that, but I have a hard time believing if we can teach a computer to read block letters that we can't teach a computer to read cursive writing.
I definitely think it's possible, but I think because of how it connects and how it flows, it's definitely a little more difficult.
Well, I mean, Brandon says cursive's not uniform. Everybody's got a different style. That's why, but I would argue that everyone has a different style of block letters too, maybe?
That's true, yeah.
I can see, I mean, obviously, I'm being obstinate, but I can see
for sure, yeah.
I can see where block letters would be easier for a computer to figure out.
Yeah, it's more structured. It's what most standard English alphabet is written in. It's not written in cursive. It's written in.
So if the one and only benefit is that we stave off computers taking over, okay, I'll give you that. That's a pretty big one. If this is going to prevent some form of grand computer takeover of our daily lives, Terminator style, okay, fine. But other than that, can anyone tell me a benefit? Mary might. Mary's in Nashville with a thought on this. Hey, Mary, how are you?
Hey, Matt. Love your show.
Thank you.
This is a nice, light topic, and given what's going on in the world today, I thought I'd just join in and give you my opinion on it.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So whether it's cursive or printing, remember what they said about schools when we were coming up, or when I was coming up, it was reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, writing is writing. And so it's kind of a necessary skill. Like, what if your computer goes down or somebody takes over and you have no access to computer, but you have to communicate via writing because you can't send an email, but you don't know how to sit down and write? I mean, it's embarrassing. My nephews and nieces that are in their 20s have sent me cards. I can't even read them. It looks like a fourth grader wrote them, and I'm like, wow, it's an art that humans should keep using.
So, what's wrong with standard block letters then?
Nothing.
Okay.
I think that, but usually the ones that can't write cursive, they can't write block letters either. The whole ball of wax is going down the toilet.
Well, that's true.
Okay. And that's what I'm saying. It should be like we're talking about. Our schools need to teach kids, the basics and math, and I think writing is one of those things where people need to be able to do that.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with you on the broad statement that people need to know how to write, obviously. But more specifically on the matter of cursive, I'm trying to, without being argumentative, I'm just trying to figure out where I've needed outside of my signature because that's the expectation. Yeah. Although, frankly, I can't tell you the last time I signed documents that weren't e-signed.
Right. It's all a sign and electronic signatures now. It's more of like I said, humans need to be able to communicate in more ways than through computers. I think it's a necessary art that we're losing along with so many other basics in the education system. And I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching little children as they grow up so that it's a thing that they can use throughout their life. They don't have to use it, but if they need it, they can write a thank you card or whatever.
One of the things that fascinates me, and I agree completely with the art of writing in and of itself, and Mary, I thank you. I mean, but we don't teach. I look at cursive and the time that it takes to teach cursive in our school system almost like I look at calligraphy. There's an artistic nature to it, and I don't deny that. But it is really of little benefit to those who do not embrace the artistic nature of the activity. Does that make sense? I can accomplish the same thing that I can accomplish with block letters that I could with cursive. Secondarily, a lot of you on Super Text line, and I don't want to get in front of the many of you that have called, and our phone lines are absolutely jammed with this topic, which is fun for me because it's much more fun than talking about, some of the other serious matters going on. I recognize a lot of you are saying the Declaration of Independence is written in cursive. The Constitution of the United States of America is written in cursive. Students cannot read historic papers as written. That's from 8906. I don't think that we would have done that way had we the ability to easily print the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution of the United States of America in a different fashion. Like if we'd have had computers or word processors back then, I don't know that old TJ wouldn't have sat down in front of his word processor and banged out the Declaration of Independence in that way. I don't think the Declaration of Independence is not more important to me because it is written in cursive. And by the way, for those saying, hey, your kids and your grandkids won't be able to read the actual document because they won't be able to understand cursive writing, have you gone back to read the actual document lately? It's a little difficult for me, and I learned cursive when I was in school. Brian is next in Nashville with a thought on this. Hey, Brian, how are you?
Doing all right, Matt. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
So I know you don't like echo chambers, so I called to disagree with you and give you my 2 cents on it. But first I want to talk about Qatar, Qatar. So I'm not from that country. I'm from America. I have friends that are Iraqi, Afghani, whatever. My neighbors are Egyptian. But I remember in this last Olympics, there was an interview being done, and one of the Olympian athletes was from Qatar, Qatar. And I forget which way he said it, but he got really angry in the interview and said, how can I have respect for you when you don't even have respect to pronounce my country correctly? So there's recording out there of the answer to that. But anyway, so the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, 100%. The government in the last couple of years, as you know, has changed literal definitions of words that we've had the definition for forever. I mean, they changed vaccine and I forget what all else, but I mean, they have no problem with changing things to fit their indoctrination. What stops them from changing the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution when people can't read it anymore?
Well, but I mean, my counter would be we can read it because there are more copies of the Constitution of the United States of America in print than there are in cursive.
And I would absolutely agree with that because that's how the original document was. You make a copy, it's a copy. But, I mean, I can't find any old dictionaries to show people, hey, see, look, this is what the real word used to mean. So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't trust it. I don't trust people not being able to read such an important document.
Well, I mean, I understand that we need to keep an ability to read. I mean, I think reading, cursive writing, and writing in cursive are two slightly different fine motor skills, but I mean, they're both important. I don't know, that justification for the time. I mean, it's all an exercise in, it's all a mental exercise anyway, right? But to justify the amount of time that our public and private schools spend on teaching young people how to write in cursive, I don't think you're getting the benefit. I mean, outside of some basic motor skills, but you want to teach kids motor skills, hand them an iPhone. You'll teach them some fine motor skills. I guess you could argue that it trains the brain to learn specialization in some form or fashion. But other than that, I have a difficult time coming up with reasons why we would spend the amount of time that we spend in our school systems on cursive writing. Lindsay might have an idea on it. Hey, Lindsay, how are you?
I'm all right. I have 3 benefits for cursive writing,
all right.
Although Chris Hand just stole one from me. I was going to give him credit because he said that a day or 2 back about the AI not being able to read it. And I hear what you're saying about people not being able to read the Constitution. Of course, it's in regular print, but what about a letter from great-grandma? I think it's, for one, my first reason is it's sentimental. My dad says he's in his 70s, and my grandparents in their 90s say, you're the only one that writes actual letters. We don't get an email from you. And I do write a lot. I write a lot of things, and my second reason is it's faster. From picking up the pen every time and putting it back down, it's just so much faster. If you're just from word to word, it's the only time you have to pick it up. I think it's absolutely necessary for the kids in school to learn it.
It's not faster than typing.
Well, it's not, but as Mary said, we're not all going to be able to type forever. And what's the fun of getting some type thing in your mailbox?
I don't know. I would be delighted to get anything in my mailbox from a human being. You know what I mean? I mean, we don't get it anymore.
Well, I heard Brian Wilson got one just addressed to the radio station and nobody else, and they're like, got it to him.
That's pretty good.
I might have to try that.
Yeah, I go down occasionally to the mail room, and I see who checks their mailbox and who does not. And Wilson does not. He's one of the nots. Of course, he has an excuse because most of the time he's out in Watertown, so he doesn't have occasion to come by the mail room.
I hear that there are multiple Brian Wilsons there.
Multiple?
Right there at WTN in Nashville.
Are there multiple Brian Wilsons?
You can fact check me, but that's what I heard.
Oh, well.
So that confused me a great deal.
That's news to me. I don't know that I Lindsay, thank you for the information.
Do we have a cloning center here that I don't know about?
I mean, I call him the one and only Brian Wilson from 3 until 7 on the drive on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. If he's not the one and only Brian Wilson, someone needs to tell me.
We need to get that figured out.
Yeah, because I would hate to lie to folks about him being the one and only Brian Wilson.
Definitely gets a little confusing for sure.
615-737-9986, 1253 on Super Talk. Hey, folks, it's Matt Murphy, and I'm here to talk about your health. I want to talk about your health plan, and more specifically, I want to talk to you about yourhealthplanman.com. If you pay for your own health insurance, if you're looking for coverage, if there's open enrollment going on for you right now, do not go online to look for quotes. You will get endless calls from call centers, and they're trying to sell you something specifically, so they're not finding you the best opportunity and the best rate for you. Instead, I encourage you to call Pat Davis. He is a part of yourhealthplanman.com and the Your Health Plan Man team. Their Freedom of Choice plan allows you to pick your doctors, and it's 30 to 60% lower than the cost of Obamacare. Here's the deal, right? I don't know that I would understand which plan is best for me, and I feel like I'm fairly on top of these things. But I don't have to because Pat Davis is on my team. He's on my side. He's your personal concierge when it comes to your health, and he's not trying to sell you a particular program. He can shop from a variety of different companies, a variety of different programs, and find the one that's right for you. So if you pay for your own health insurance, if your employer coverage is just too expensive, if you're on COBRA or uninsured, call right now. 855-4-PLAN-MAN. That's 855-4-PLAN-MAN or yourhealthplanman.com. Yourhealthplanman.com. They will design a plan that is managed by you, not by the government, and that's important. It's yourhealthplanman.com.
If you have a 401k at work, chances are you've seen something called a target date fund. Now, the idea behind a target date fund is if you're going to retire in a specific year, let's say 2030, all you do is put all your money in that fund. You don't even have to think about it. Set it and forget it is the idea. Now, one of the things that I warn people about regarding these types of funds is many times they're not nearly as diversified as you think. When we look at investing, when we look at diversification, we want to own really small companies, really large companies, really growth-oriented, really value-oriented companies, and diversify between these different market areas. Target date funds tend to focus more attention down here for a really basic reason. It sells better. Because you're investing in very big, well-known U.S. companies, what happens is investors tend to like to look like the market, as we say. And the problem, though, is when we do that is we can go very long periods of time. 1966 through 1982 is one example. More recently, 2000 through 2012, where large U.S. stocks had no return, where other market segments actually did quite well. So one of the things that happens is when we invest in a target date fund, we may be overly concentrated and have more risk than we really realize. So if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning and how we educate investors, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or you can call 615-851-1950.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The level of defense and defensiveness over cursive writing is fascinating to me. But I get it. There's a lot of defensiveness over the concepts behind cursive writing. I'm just defending handwritten letters. I mean, a lot of you are saying, well, handwritten notes are better than, typed notes or Well, is cursive more personal than just standard handwriting? I don't think so. Is cursive more personal than other handwritten notes? I don't think it is. If so, then I've been doing something wrong. I don't find it to be that way. More coming up in just a moment. 1 down, 2 to go. It's the Murphy Show on Super Talk.
From ABC News, I'm Dave Packer. The IDF says another group of hostages held by Hamas have been released, are in Red Cross custody, and are on the way back to Israeli territory. It comes on the 5th day of the extended Israel-Hamas ceasefire. In exchange, 150 Palestinian prisoners released from Israeli jails and
more than 800 relief supply trucks have entered Gaza since the hostage release pause in fighting. That is a big jump in relief supplies from days before. Planes from the U.S. to Egypt will deliver medical supplies, food, and winter clothing as the rainy season in Gaza has already begun. White House saying the additional humanitarian aid is part of President Biden's commitment to helping Palestinian civilians.
ABC's Andy Field, happening right now in Atlanta. A memorial service for former First Lady Rosalind Carter. Under hospice care, her longtime husband, 99-year-old President Jimmy Carter, is there, as are President Biden, former President Clinton, and all former First Ladies. Rosalind Carter died November 19th at her home in Plains, Georgia, at the age of 96. Foreign hackers taking credit for a cyber attack on U.S. infrastructure.
U.S. Homeland Security officials are investigating a potential hack on a water utility in western Pennsylvania that suggests some of our nation's infrastructure is vulnerable. An Iranian-based group of hackers has claimed responsibility for the cyber attack, saying they targeted part of the Al Aqaba water system because it uses software developed by an Israeli company.
ABC News Chief Justice Correspondent Pierre Thomas. The Senate Judiciary Committee holding a hearing today on gun violence. Democratic Committee Chairman Senator Dick Durbin during his opening remarks.
In 2022, there were more than 48,000 firearm-related deaths in the United States. That's 132 Americans every day dying from gun violence.
Pope Francis canceling his trip to Dubai for the UN climate conference on doctor's orders. The Pope recovering from a mild flu, according to the Vatican. You're listening to ABC News.
Have you
All right, here we are. Here we go. It is hour number 2 of the Matt Murphy Show underway. 107. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Episode 463 of the proceedings today. We're here till 3. We'll hand off to Brian Wilson at that time. You're invited to be a part of the show, either passively listening on 99.7 FM. Maybe you're taking us on your mobile device, on your streaming platform of your choosing, wherever you go. If you are doing so, we thank you for that. And if you aren't aware of it, you can take us wherever you want to go by finding a streaming platform. You know, we're on Spotify. We're on, all of them. I can't even name them. We're on all of them. But you can find our app at Supertalk 99.7 WTN, and you can find out all the information that you need to take us where you go at 99.7WTN.com. Speaking of going, we got a couple of events coming up in the near future. I'm going to be at tomorrow evening. For those interested, I will be a part of a panel discussion at what was formerly known as Bold Patriot Brewing. They have rebranded themselves as Baseline Brewing. Baseline Brewing is over in L&L Market, on the back end of L&L Market on Charlotte Pike. I'll be there tomorrow. I think the event starts at 6. It is a panel discussion and an update on where we are regarding the Bristol Motor Speedway's effort to revitalize Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway. So you guys know, regular listeners know, I've been invested in that. As soon as I came to Nashville, I was intrigued by the history of the Speedway and the future of the Speedway, and I think we've got some more clarity on the potential future of the Speedway. So I'll be there. Norm Parton will be there, who's been on our show many times to discuss this, and hopefully you will be there as well. That's Baseline Brewing. That's starting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. That's not necessarily a station event, but I was asked to be a part of it as what I would hope to be a voice of positivity for the future of the racetrack. That's coming up at Baseline Brewing. That's L&L Market tomorrow at 6 o'clock. And then on the 5th, we've got our Field of Dreams, or Field of Toys at Nissan Stadium. Field of Dreams, whatever. The Field of Toys, that is on the 5th, all day long. Our family of radio stations at Cumulus Nashville sponsoring that, inviting you to bring us toys, new unwrapped toys, to help put under the tree of those in need over the holiday season. And then on the 7th, we'll be out from 4 until 8 at Scoreboard at Cedar Creek Marina. So there's plenty of opportunities for you to come out and say hello. And you can argue with me on the issue of cursing, if you so desire, at any of these 3 venues. Many of you wanting to offer your thoughts regarding cursive writing, as we brought it up earlier today on the Libertarian Lunchtime Hour. So Patrick says, I know you're probably moving on from cursive writing discussion, but I'm completely opposed to it. The return on time investment just doesn't make sense. I spent years in middle school learning to write cursive, only to get to the military academy and find out that cursive writing was unacceptable. And I had to write everything in capital block letters because legibility was what was most important. My wife and I disagreed on this issue for homeschooling, but the return on time investment just does not make sense. Does not make sense. You are one of the few, and I just lost the super texter there, so I apologize. Oh no, Patrick. So Patrick, you're one of the few. So many of you are writing in a spirited defense of cursive writing, saying that it helps promote brain activity and whatnot. I just feel like there are better ways to utilize our time, and there are better ways to promote mental development than writing in cursive. I don't write in cursive. I haven't written in cursive since grade school. I never wrote in cursive in high school that I remember. I mean, I don't think I did. I don't remember doing it. I mean, I remember learning cursive. I remember writing in cursive. I remember after learning and writing in cursive, I stopped writing in cursive, and I haven't written in cursive since. I'm not anti-cursive. I would say that it is easier to read block letters than it is to read cursive writing because cursive writing is a little more unique. I understand the argument that is currently being made about artificial intelligence and the inability of artificial intelligence to read cursive writing. If we get to I would say this on that front. If we get to the point where the only thing standing between us and the computers taking over is writing in cursive, we are screwed.
Absolutely.
We are totally screwed. The computers have then won.
Because even then, I can hardly read cursive. So, who's the real winner there?
And for those of you saying that it's important to be able to read, I think being able to read and process cursive writing is a little bit different than actually being able to do it. I look at those two things a little differently. I think you ought to be able to read cursive without necessarily having to write it. And from a historical, I can read Old English. I can read Beowulf, but I couldn't write in Old English. So there's that. One more round of telephone calls on this, and we'll move on to other things. There are other subject matters to discuss. One, Governor Bill Lee is making his official announcement today regarding his education scholarship program. That's coming up at 2 o'clock, and we'll discuss that with Scott Sapicki in the 2 o'clock hour. We also have Senator Marsha Blackburn coming up in about an hour or so. In the meantime, Bobby is next up on the issue of cursive writing. Bobby, thank you for your call. Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon. This is an interesting subject, and I can't remember how many years ago, maybe 4 or 5, we passed a law, and I helped pass it, to require cursive to be taught. And part of the reason was, some of which have been mentioned, the fact that our founding documents are written in cursive, being able to read them, being able to read letters from your parents, perhaps grandparents, great-grandparents, to carry on that tradition. But we also learned that it is good for the brain for a child to learn to write cursive because of the eye-hand coordination, and that it develops that brain in order, as they learn that, and the better they get at it, the more they get out of their brain. And I don't think it's useless time in the classroom, because I think that's a good way to use it, and we're very happy that we did that.
Well, I hear you. And Bobby, I'm not going to argue those points with you. I understand the validity of them. At the same time, I feel like I've led a relatively productive life, maybe not as productive as I could have, and I can't remember the last time I wrote a single thing outside of my name in cursive. Do you write in cursive?
Yes, I write thank you notes in cursive. I use cursive all the time. That's your choice, but learning it and it being good for a child's brain to do that, and them using that to help them learn about other things too, I think is a great way to use that time.
Do you think cursive, in a functional way, is cursive more important than teaching a kid how to use a keyboard?
No, and they're not doing much of that anymore. That's for some either.
That's a great answer. You're right. Oh, Bobby, I'll leave it there. That's a great answer. Thank you for the call. She's right. They're not doing much of that either, sadly. Now it's all on their phones, right? The younger generation probably listens to this conversation with a fair amount of detached amusement, in as much as they don't know what the hell cursive is to begin with, and they barely know what a keyboard is. So we're 3 degrees away from cursive writing as a discipline anyway. Jerry is next in Franklin. Jerry, thank you for your call. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Jerry. What's on your mind?
I was telling the call screener, I'm a youth pastor in Smyrna, and it's not necessarily about cursive, but I guess it is tied to that a little bit. I had 2 of my young ladies in my youth class one night. We have a clock on the back wall, and it's got hands on it, and they were looking at it, and they were looking at each other, and they were just quizzically looking at each other, and one of them asked the other one, "How do you tell time with that?" And the other one goes, "I don't know." And it just bumfuzzled me. I thought they were joking, and then I found out they really weren't. They didn't know what time it was with a clock with hands on it. And so I'm just kind of tying that together with why are we not teaching them some of these little basic things, and what's the problem with doing that? And a lot of kids today can't even make simple change unless the cash register tells them how much to give back. They can't do that either. I guess maybe they should continue to teach cursive and teach them how to tell time with a clock with hands, and teach them how to make simple change. And maybe if we stop teaching some other stuff that they shouldn't be teaching them, that they would have time to do all that.
Yeah, but I would ask you this, Jerry. I mean, and I understand that, and a lot of folks on the super text line are saying, well, I would sure rather them teach cursive than, gender studies or whatever. And I get all of that. I mean, I understand. I don't think it's a binary choice. I don't think you have to pick one or the other. But on the question of the analog clock, that hits close to home because in radio, we use certain terminology that I think is become dated. We say it's 10 minutes until the bottom of the hour. Right? And people that don't understand an analog clock don't know what the heck the bottom of the hour is. Right? I mean, they don't understand at least they don't understand where the phrase comes from. But my question would be, why is it a necessary skill for younger people to learn about analog clocks versus digital clocks? Because nothing's analog anymore.
Well, how many? I get your point. So don't misunderstand me. I'm not.
No. I think it's a good discussion.
I'm just saying. How many places have clocks with hands on them, and if they can't tell? I mean, I know everybody's got a phone. Don't misunderstand me. I guess I'm just old fashioned. I'm 61 years old. I just think that kids should be able, people should be able to tell time, and they should, again with the just giving simple change and stuff. I mean. They're not even teaching them simple math anymore. So I don't know what.
Well, yeah, I mean the change thing. You're right.
Either, so.
You're so right. I agree with you that if you really want to freak them out, and thanks Jerry for the call. If you want to freak one of these convenience store workers out, I mean, try to doing this, and you've probably done it in the past where, they sell you something and it's $6.53. And so you give them $20.03, and they have no idea why you did it. And you're like, well, I'm doing it to avoid pennies or whatever. One of the things that I've noticed, just an observation based on the convenience store discussion, when you tell, for some reason, I don't know what it is psychologically, but I've noticed it. I tell every convenience store worker, every real, worker where there's an exchange of money, if I have pennies coming back to me, I say, keep the pennies. That's what I say. I say this because I don't want the pennies. Well, almost half the time, if I say keep the pennies, they keep all the change. And I don't know what it is psychologically about that. Not the bills. So if, using my example of $6.53, and I give them a 10, so I've got $3.47 coming back, and I say keep the pennies, oftentimes I'm just getting $3, and I'm like, no, I didn't say keep the change, I said keep the pennies. Oh, I'm sorry, now we got to go back into the register to give me my 40 cents. Very odd. But you're right. A lot of times they don't understand. I think understanding basic math, however, is different than understanding cursive versus block or print lettering. I think we better invest in teaching our kids how to use block or print lettering because we're losing that battle too. I mean, forget about cursive. Some kids don't know how to write at all. And yes, 0668, I understand that. This is a different evergreen topic, the topic of pennies. I am anti-penny. I do not believe that we need the penny in American society anymore. I understand that it's the basic unit of our monetary currency, but I also understand that you can live a life without that minor unit. We used to have half pennies, by the way. We don't have half pennies anymore. There's a reason for that. We don't need pennies anymore either. You just standardize it, and all you have to do is at the point of sale, move it up or move it down. In other words, if a sale ends up at 1 or 2, you move it down to 0. If it ends up at 3 or 4, you move it up to 5, and you're done, and you don't have to deal with pennies anymore. 90% of pennies are in jars and cars and people's homes or lost. Pennies cost more to make than they are worth. And in my world, they are worth less. And I never accept them. I never accept them. Penny is what change is called in the United Kingdom. Maybe that's so. Maybe that's so. 121. All right, moving on to other things. I'll get to those who have been holding on this subject, and we'll move on to this youngster in blackface. So apparently, someone writing for Deadspin, which is a sports website, has taken exception with a young man at a Kansas City Chiefs game because that young man decided to paint his face red and black. We'll discuss in a moment. It's 122 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Specifically regarding precision ag, this is a movement or an initiative that Pheasants and Quail Forever has taken on where we can help farmers take advantage of the data they collect and during harvest, during planting season, and use that to identify areas in the field that are underproducing for whatever reason. Maybe it's shade, water, there's perennial wet spots, odd areas that are just hard to farm. Farm equipment's getting big now, and it's hard to farm some of these smaller areas. And so these areas that the yield isn't high enough to exceed the input costs, we're losing money on those acres. So Are there some alternate land use covers, wildlife covers that we can use and put on the ground that benefit wildlife but also benefit the bottom line? There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of conservation programs and conservation practices out there that can benefit the land, and they require management. And so some people might be familiar with the Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP. And that is a program administered by USDA for farmers and landowners to take those certain areas out of production and return them to a wildlife cover beneficial to different wildlife.
We started taking non-productive acres years ago and putting them in CRP, and seeing a great benefit of that, not only for wildlife, but erosion control and the money side of it. You know, we have to make a living to stay in business just like everybody else. You know, if you've got non-productive acres that you're losing money on, and you can get something out of them, plus benefit the soil from erosion, plus benefit the wildlife.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the Matt Murphy Show in progress, 126. Glad to have you with us. There's a Pentagon briefing going on. 12 more hostages have been released based on the cessation of hostilities between the Israeli forces, the IDF, and Hamas, the terrorist organization that brutally attacked and slaughtered Israeli civilians and others on October 7th. Remember, there's one aggressor in this conflict, and that aggressor is Hamas. Sadly, the United States media refuses to report on the aggression of Hamas and how they started it all. And if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times, if you don't fully understand who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, then I would suggest becoming more learned on the topic. I wrote down number 4 on my list today, which I write, by the way, every day. I don't print. I don't type it out. I write it out because I'm old. I feel old school doing it, but I guess I'm not old school enough because I print it. I don't write in cursive. Number 5 on my list. It seems, this is what I wrote today, this morning. It seems the Palestinians in Gaza hate the Jews. And I wrote that based on a story I was reading regarding an individual that was turned over by the Palestinians to Hamas when they could have just as easily led that individual to safety or freedom outside of the country. So you either say they are in agreement with Hamas and their tactics, or they're petrified of them to the point that they turned this individual over. Well, if that's the case, then why are they not looking at the IDF as a liberation force as opposed to an occupying force? It's because largely they agree with the mission statement of the Hamas terrorist organization. And that mission statement begins and ends with the destruction of Israel and the death of all the Jews. But back to cursive writing with David in Hendersonville. It's been a topic of much debate and consternation. Hey, David, how are you?
All right, Mr. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm great, friend. Thank you.
Always enjoy listening to y'all. Retired, drive 3 days a week, and your radio station's on my radio all day long.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for that. Tell a friend or a neighbor about us, David, in your travels.
I try to.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people already stole my thunder, but, yeah, a lot of the people you probably talked to graduated probably in the 80s, 70s, and later, you know what I mean? But new people don't learn none of that cursive writing. My wife taught kindergarten. She taught it in her classes. And like I said, a lot of people already said a lot of things I wanted to. But what would you rather have? Teach cursive writing or critical race theory? And I'll let you go with that.
Thank you, friend. I appreciate your call, and I appreciate you listening as much as you do. Yes, I don't think it's a either-or proposition regarding teaching cursive in our schools. I don't think we either teach cursing or critical race theory. I think we can teach neither or both, depending on the school system and the area of the country. I want to finish these up and move on to some other things, but I do not wish to leave any of you hanging. So let's go to Ron in the borough. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Yeah, I know everybody. My wife was a school teacher, but one of the things that I've learned over the years, instead of trying to worry about cursive, try getting the kids to address a letter, envelope or a package so they can send it. A lot of them don't even know how to do that. That's all I want to say.
Well, Ron, I'm glad you made the call, and I'm glad you said what you said. But, I mean, you can do that with block lettering or handwritten lettering without having to do it in cursive, which is the point. If we have lost the ability to address letters, I think we need to focus on that before we focus on the issue of cursive writing. Doug is next in Nash. Hey, Doug, how are you?
What's going on, Matt?
What's up, man?
Hey, I hate to see ignorance abound, and I'm not calling you ignorant at all, but the kids today, they don't have a work ethic. They don't know English. They don't understand how to add, subtract, and give you change. They don't know how to read a regular hour, minute hand clock. Why don't we stick to the basics? Genuinely adding, subtracting, arithmetic, English, the way we all were brought up, because it's amazing how we got to where we are from the education that we had, let's say, 200 years ago. We learned, the basics, and we stuck with the basics until like the past 30 or 40 years. And it's amazing how far we got on that basic education. And so get rid of the smoke and mirrors, get rid of all the extra, all the other silly stuff, and just stick to the basics, and then let people be grow into what they want to grow into. Because it seems like it's the consensus of everyone I've listened to on your radio show today. They're all talking about the basics in education. And I think that's like, in my opinion, that's like the theme of what everyone's saying, is that they want to stick with the basics because that's where the education begins.
Well, I will agree with you that if we can't get back to basic writing, reading, arithmetic, then, I lose a lot of hope in the future of the United States of America. And I try to hang on to that hope as best I can. I'm naturally predispositioned, and thank you, Doug, for the call, to be a pessimist. And as pessimistic as I am, sometimes I'm reminded, we had a young lady in recently, Abby Elks, who is engaged in a dog adoption program at her school. I think she goes to Davidson Academy, if I'm remembering it correctly. And her dad brought her in, and she gave me an incredible amount of hope for the future. I am hopeful that youngsters such as Abby will take over and lead the way for others to follow and engage in educational opportunities available to them and learn. Some of this is nostalgia-based, I think. Some of it is a matter of, well, we did it back in the day the way that we did it back in the day, so why don't we do it that way now? Well, times have changed. The internet is such a fundamental part of life in American society today, where it had no existence in my childhood. And I don't consider myself old, although I am. I don't consider myself old. A lot of those factors go into our belief that losing cursive is losing something substantial and needed in American society. I just don't see it that way. 133 Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It might seem odd to you that I'm going to talk with you about losing weight during the holiday season, but it is a fact that a lot of you who have invested certain time and energy into weight loss, you feel like November and December are just lost months. Don't be that guy, and I've been there. Don't say, well, I'll crank this up in January and December's just lost to the holidays. No. Let's get in front of the holidays with PhD Weight Loss. They've helped me lose 36 plus pounds. It's the finest endorsement that I can give them. It is a structured program. They will get you to your target weight. They will keep you at that target weight through your maintenance program, and they help you understand how to feel better in your life by eating better. You will sleep better, and I'm telling you, friends, it's the best thing that I've done at PhD Weight Loss. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team of nutritionists have developed a system that works for you. It is so simple to understand. It is simple to utilize, and there's a level of accountability that I love because it's never judgment. It's simply support through the PhD Weight Loss team. So if you are a guy, you'll lose between 3 and 5 pounds a week. If you're a female, you'll lose between 2 and 3 pounds a week. And don't forget about the PhD guarantee. They guarantee you'll get within 5 pounds of your target weight by the end of your program, or they continue to coach you for free until you do. You can't ask for more than that. It's the PhD guarantee. Go to myphdweightloss.com. Get in front of the holiday season. myphdweightloss.com. 138, general consensus on the topic of cursive writing is that we need to be able to read the original U.S. Constitution and other historical documents. To which I say, well, there are plenty of versions of those in print or in, typewritten in typeface. That's just me. Also, I never thought that this topic, which is of interest to me, it's interesting to hear various points of view on it. I've presented a relatively mild point of view on it. I'm not against cursive writing. I just don't see the benefits necessarily of cursive writing, and I evaluate the time being used to teach cursive writing, and could that time be used in a better or more beneficial way? And someone else brought up analog clocks, and I'm like, look, the time on a digital clock is not inferior to an analog clock. I don't understand. I will admit that I don't quite understand why some of us feel that it is so dadgum necessary to be able to read time on an analog clock. As long as you understand time on a digital clock, I mean, understanding time is understanding time. Understanding that there are 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. Once you understand that, whether you absorb it through a digital clock or an analog clock, I guess I don't understand how the analog clock is superior.
I think it's more standing on the fact of quote unquote tradition of what was taught in schools through the years. I don't know. It's something I think I've had conversations with my grandparents about this, and not necessarily cursive in general, but like what's taught in schools and like the new forms of math taught right now and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, why can't we just do basics, simple addition and subtraction and all that kind of stuff and all over the place? And I think it's the fact that that's what was taught for so long, and to go and change it, some people aren't comfortable with change. And I'm good either way. I learned how to do cursive. I learned how to do analog clocks in school. I learned how to make change.
You think you could write me a note in cursive and I could read it?
I don't know if you'd be able to read it, but I don't think anybody can read my normal handwriting. So I think that's put me at a disadvantage there.
Well, you need to work harder on your handwriting.
Yeah. If I take time with it, it's legible.
Or do you? I mean, or you could just text me,
Yeah.
I mean, there's that.
Yeah.
I mean, and people are freaking out when I say that. People are going nuts for me to say that. The world is always moving forward and changing. We have technologies that make it so much easier to communicate in modern society. We don't have to wait for the postman to bring us a letter written a fortnight ago. I mean, isn't it Jim Gaffigan that does a great bit about this? And I know that I told you we weren't. We'll finish up the hour on it. Because I recranked it up, and I'm sorry. It's my fault, but
he's back at it.
I wanted to move it. Every time I try to get out, they try to get back in. I feel like Al Pacino in The Godfather Part 3, but I mean, I understand there is a concern or consternation about throwing old things away, and there's a nostalgia element to it. But I mean, I go back to the analog versus the digital clock. How is a digital clock inferior to an analog clock if they both keep time properly? And I learned on an analog clock. Come on. I mean, I get it. I mean, I worked at a radio station when I was 15 years old where I had to change. I remember this. It was a big deal for me. We were on the, I think it's part of the reason that I hate daylight saving time so much, because on a Saturday night at the radio station, I had to reset like 20 analog clocks. And you had to reset them exactly to the time because they had to be timed out so that you hit the news or whatever was going on at the top of the hour in the proper fashion. And so we had a hotline number to the National Naval Observatory Clock. And I think I can do this from memory. And this was 35 years ago, where you dial up that number. Hello, you've reached the United States Naval Observatory Clock. At the sound of the tone, the time is 1:43 and 20 seconds. Beep. Hello, you've reached the United States Naval Observatory Clock. And that's all it did.
Wow.
That's all it did was give you the appropriate time. Over and over and over again. And You go around and you put that on speakerphone, and you have to reset every analog damn clock in the building.
And if
then
you miss that beep, then you're gonna scurry, get to the next beep.
You kind of hold on. Yeah, you gotta move it because you gotta anticipate where the beep's going, and you gotta move it.
No.
And I think it did it like on the 5s or on the 10s. But here's the thing: I never thought that this discussion, a friendly little banter, a friendly little back and forth about cursive writing and analog versus digital clocks, I never thought that the result of this discussion would be me being called an effing moron. But that's what's happened.
Whoa.
4333 said, Matt, I think you're a bleeping moron. And he wrote the word. If you think reading an analog, I want to read it as written because I think this is ironic because he'll blame voice to text for this, I bet.
I have my hand ready next to the sensor bar here.
Matt, I think you're a bleeping moron if you think reading an analog clock or writing in cursive doesn't need be taught in school. And I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Also, I never said that. I do not believe that it is the best utilization of time in our classrooms, considering what we have in front of our 3rd graders and our 4th graders and our 5th graders. That's all. In the meantime, clearly all of you disagree. Like every single one of you disagree with me. You want me to go to 5? 4. Oh, Aaron. Aaron has single-handedly kept this conversation going because I was going to go to something different, but now I'm going to stick with it until 2 o'clock. Hey, Aaron, how are you?
Doing good, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you for calling in.
I haven't ever called before. I listen to all you guys regularly, but this conversation stimulated me to express a view that I feel very strongly about.
I'm glad you did.
It's related to the discussion topic, whether cursive or block writing. More importantly to me, in receiving notes written by, in many cases, people that are supposed to be well-educated and intelligent, is the failure to spell correctly, punctuate correctly, and compose correctly. Doesn't matter a whole lot which mode of writing you use. If the words are misspelled and sentences are not punctuated and paragraphs are not identified, and the composition is horrible. So I think our school system is atrociously missing the bigger issue, the more important issue, and that is, if the composition, regardless of what it is well composed, the spelling is good, and the punctuation is correct, then you can make it out. But if those things aren't, it doesn't matter which mode of writing it is, if those things aren't paid attention to, it's more difficult to read.
Well, and some would argue, Aaron, that we're giving up too much when I say this. But toward your point, I would far more be invested in focusing on making sure that the grammar's proper, making sure that kids understand that the manner in which they text one another on their phones is not how you sit down and compose a proper letter or essay, obviously. If you focus on those grammatical issues more so than whether or not they're writing in block lettering or cursive lettering, the latter really doesn't affect me or really, I believe, affect life in much of any way, whereas the former, the grammatical issues, I think greatly affect one's future in America.
Exactly my point.
Yeah.
If it's, it doesn't matter how it's written so much as it does the construction of the writing, and in my opinion. And I've received, like I said, cards in the mail from people that are thought to be intelligent and well-educated, and even on national TV, some of the journalists, some of the anchors, some of the things they say just are redundant and ridiculous. For example, on one particular channel, and I know exactly when it happened, one of the anchors began to say 10 minutes time. Well, time is the minutes is the unit of time. So you don't need to say 10 minutes time. That's redundant. That's just a small example. But I'm a student, not by trade or avocation, and I don't know why I have an aptitude for these things, but I do. Spelling is one of my hang-ups. And I think well-written cursive and well-written block writing is, if it's legible and the words and composition and punctuation and all that is good, then you can make it out. But another thing that, I don't know how many people I've made this comment to.
Mm-hmm.
Words are buckets that carry meaning. And if the buckets aren't properly filled, the meaning is lost. And whether you're writing a text or, a lot of these young people in their communication, they use abbreviations. And most of those I don't know, and I don't care to know. But even if they use abbreviations for a lot of words, the ones that they don't, if they're properly spelled, the communication can occur. But if the communication is not transmitted, then it's useless. And no matter what your area of expertise, if you can't communicate your thought or your idea in legible terms, understandable terms, the communication is not received.
Well, Aaron, while I have to go, I want to say this in the spirit of what you just said. I consider you, while you've only called once, I consider you a caller VIP. I want you to call back ASAP, PDQ, okay? And with that, I have to say, GB. Nothing makes you feel older in your life. I don't care how old you are. At least for me, nothing makes me feel older than someone abbreviating something, and then I have to go online on the Google machine and type it in to find out what they're meaning. I'm not talking LOL or whatever, but some of this stuff is just foreign to me. Now, Hand doesn't have this trouble on the Chris Hand. He knows it all. He's got the lingo down. I feel like an old timer when I listen to the Chris Hand show, because you got Chris Hand and Mac Moore, and they're all based.
That's right.
You know what that means. But I would agree with you on the redundancy. Redundancy is death, especially in our business. When someone's being redundant, when they're saying things that are unnecessary, repetitive, unessential, expendable, the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Can't stand that. Wouldn't put up with it. It's 151 on Super Talk. I'll tell you what I do agree with and I do appreciate, and that's the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. Steve Abramowitz and his team, they're great at what they do. They've taken Franklin, Tennessee by storm, and really all across this great state and this region of the world. They have such informative podcasts up and running, hundreds of them as we stand right now. They're frequently the number one show in politics on Podomatic. You can find them on Deezer, iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, all of your favorite podcast apps, and also they're on Rumble Video. If you look hard enough, you can even find the over an hour that Steve and I spent together discussing a variety of issues on his conservative advocacy podcast. It's the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. Steve will be here Thursday, as a matter of fact. Stop by and thrill us with some of the stuff going on in Franklin and beyond. Steve is CEO and editor-in-chief of the Mill Creek View newspaper. Good friend of the show, and we invite you to go by. I know I do. mcview.us. That's mcview.us. It's the Mill Creek View Tennessee podcast. Check it out today.
If you have a 401k at work, chances are you've seen something called a target date fund. Now, the idea behind a target date fund is if you're going to retire in a specific year, let's say 2030, all you do is put all your money in that fund. You don't even have to think about it. Set it and forget it is the idea. Now, one of the things that I warn people about regarding these types of funds is many times they're not nearly as diversified as you think. When we look at investing, when we look at diversification, we want to own really small companies, really large companies, really growth-oriented, really value-oriented companies, and diversify between these different market areas. Target date funds tend to focus more attention down here for a really basic reason. It sells better. because you're investing in very big, well-known U.S. companies. What happens is investors tend to like to look like the market, as we say. And the problem, though, is when we do that is we can go very long periods of time. 1966 through 1982 is one example. More recently, 2000 through 2012, where large U.S. stocks had no return, where other market segments actually did quite well. So one of the things that happens is when we invest in a target date fund, we may be overly concentrated and have more risk than we really realize. So if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning and how we educate investors, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or you can call 615-851-1950.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, winding down hour number 2. Coming up in hour number 3, Senator Marsha Blackburn will stop by. visit with Marcia for a few moments, talking about the Israeli-Hamas conflict, the ongoing aggression there, plus the death, the passing, and the funeral of Rosalind Carter was interrupted by protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters, and I know that Marcia's fired up about that. We'll discuss with her in the 2 o'clock hour. Also anticipating a visit by Representative Scott Cepicky, who is at the governor's event announcing the Education Scholarship Program. We will find out from Scott what he thinks about it, considering his efforts regarding education, public education more specifically, in the State General Assembly. That's also in the 2 o'clock hour. In the meantime, winding down a conversation about cursive writing and clocks and whatnot. Terry's in Nolensville with a final thought. Hey, Terry, how are you?
Fine. How are you today?
I'm great. We're limited on time, but I wanted to get to you as quickly as possible.
Real quick. Analog clocks is a necessary thing when you start talking about directions. Is something 12 o'clock high? Who's got your 6? Something is at 3 o'clock up, to your right. 9 o'clock. If you don't teach the analog clock, how do you teach directions?
You use degrees. You say that's at 45 degrees, that's at 90 degrees, that's at 180 degrees.
It's behind you.
It's behind you. It's in front of you. It's to your right. I'm not trying to.
It's behind you. Run.
I'm not trying to pick on Terry, but I think, come on. I admit that it's not nearly as fun as saying, I got your 6, bruh. I got your 6.
Just got to make sure I'm up to date on the Call of Duty lingo.
I think you can do it, though. I think you can accomplish this.
Well, I've got your 2.
That's true. You do. I like that.
Hey.
There's Mac Morey with the 2 o'clock news on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Two o'clock, I'm Mac Morey with your top stories right now. A cool 41 degrees, sunny in Nashville. And we got some slight temperature changes to come later this week. We'll tell you about them in a complete forecast just a few minutes away. Hawaii's Attorney General is issuing subpoenas to Maui County government offices as part of an investigation into the response to August's wildfire that killed 100 people in Lahaina. A 100th victim died recently from fire injuries. Here's Alex Stone with the report.
Among the Maui County agencies receiving subpoenas, Maui Emergency Management. Its director quit after questions were raised about his experience for the job. He also raised eyebrows when he indicated tsunami sirens would have caused residents to run toward the flames. Those flames were coming from higher ground. He said,
"The public is trained to seek higher ground in the event that the siren is sounded."
Investigators are looking into whether those sirens should have been sounded.
And Maui County says they are fully cooperating with the investigation. Right now in Tennessee, skeletal remains were found in Shelbyville over the holiday weekend. It was on Saturday that remains were found near Blue Ribbon Parkway and Shoma Drive. Officers said that the remains were fully intact, fully clothed. The TBI is now assisting in that investigation. Over in California, a fire that started in an apartment building under construction in South LA has destroyed 5 buildings now. Blake Trolley has details.
2 people were taken to a hospital with severe burns. LA City Fire Captain Cody Wyreader says the lack of walls at the construction site allowed the fire to intensify.
Because this is wide open inside, the fire has really no blockage inside. So now it's easy to be able to wrap through this thing.
More than 140 firefighters knocked the fire down in about an hour. The Red Cross has been contacted to help the 17 people displaced. Blake Trolley, ABC News, Los Angeles.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey, friends, the Tennessee Men's Clinic has 2 locations to serve you in Middle Tennessee. One has been longstanding in Midtown Nashville. The other opened recently this year in Cool Springs and Franklin to serve those of you south of the city. It's all designed for one goal. And, gentlemen, I want you to listen up. If you're feeling sluggish, run down, if you don't feel like you have the energy that you used to have and you just chalk it up to being middle-aged or beyond, do not do this. Check those numbers. Let's get an assessment of where you are from a blood work perspective. Let's get an examination happening at Tennessee Men's Clinic, and let's see what they can do to easily and naturally get you back to energy and vitality, whether that manifests itself in the gym or doing yard work outside or even bedroom activities. It's all interrelated with your T levels, and they will check them out at Tennessee Men's Clinic. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com for more information about how they can serve you. TennesseeMen'sClinic.com, or better yet, go ahead and give them a call and schedule that appointment today at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. They're there to serve you. Area code 615-208-9090, 208-9090 for our friends at the Tennessee Men's Clinic. And be sure to tell them Matt Murphy sent you to the one and only Tennessee Men's Clinic. It is the Matt Murphy Radio Show, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Pleased you've joined us for hour number 3. As we speak, we have a press conference going on in Middle Tennessee. I think it's at I think it's at one of the museums down at Bicentennial Park, where Governor Bill Lee is announcing and unveiling his Education Scholarship Fund. We'll get into more of that coming up in just a little bit with Representative Scott Cepicky, who's going to stop by after the event has concluded, and we're monitoring that on social media platforms, and we'll report back to you some of the particulars involving that very exciting potential for scholarship money to be used for those who choose to move from a failing school, or at least a school failing to them, into a better educational opportunity for their kids, even if it includes private or homeschooling opportunities. In the meantime, we are pleased to be joined by the one and only Senator Marsha Blackburn, who joins us on the Murphy Show hotline to talk about some of the things going on around the world today and around the United States of America. And it's always a pleasure to catch up with our good senator from the state of Tennessee. Hello, Senator. How are you?
I am doing well, and I'm delighted to join you today. Thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you as always. I want to start here because it's my understanding you've been monitoring the funeral of one of our former First Ladies, Rosalynn Carter. And despite, I was talking to someone about this earlier, Senator, that it really reminds me that there was a time where we might have political differences, but those political differences were from a very earnest and honest place. And say what you will about the politics of the Carter family, but their hearts are in such the right place, especially when it comes to public service. It is a loss, and it is a shame that I'm witnessing as I'm looking at the funeral procession. I'm witnessing these protests that exist outside of the funeral. What do you know about this?
I know exactly what we are seeing on TV, and I think it is of concern to everyone that a period of mourning, a time of loss and sadness for the Carter family, the life of someone who served our nation as a First Lady, who was very given to working on mental health and readiness issues for children, that the funeral that is there in her memory and honor would have people that show up to protest and to, they're calling for a ceasefire. They're pro-Hamas. And really, Matt, that's about what we know about this. I think it was shocking to everyone, regardless of their political beliefs. It was shocking to see this type conduct.
Well, it is sad that we can't have a moment of reflection without the infusion of some of this type of activity. And I just noted it, and I was aware that you had noticed it too, and I wanted to get you an opportunity to comment on it. Beyond that, speaking about, the Carter presidency, and obviously that was not a positive time in American life, as I don't really recall it, but I certainly remember my parents and my grandparents going through it. And I feel like we might be at a certain place in American history where we're revisiting that attitude. I noted a Wall Street Journal article that indicated that polling shows that the American people are kind of losing a sense of the American dream, losing a sense of, what it means to, build a life, build a family, buy a home. That entire premise that you and I grew up with, we seem to be losing the hope that that's possible for the future. Are you aware of this attitude amongst the people of the state of Tennessee, and what can we do to combat it?
Well, what we are seeing it, and yes, the Wall Street Journal had an article in on this topic last weekend, and then Bloomberg had one in yesterday, and they actually broke down how much different things in the basket of goods that we purchase, what the inflation rate has been on those things. Now, it does affect how people think what is possible with the American dream, and will my children be better off than I am, and what are they going to face? And when you look at the amount of debt that this nation has accrued and the escalation rate of that debt from COVID moving forward, and you say, what is this going to do to our kids' futures? Because if interest rates continue to go up, and you mentioned the Carter presidency, and that's when you would see 17, 18, 20% interest rates, then what does that do to our ability to fund the federal government when so much of it is going to go to debt service? And what is it going to do to the earning power of our children? Are they going to be faced with the taxation rates that you see in some of the countries around the globe, where we as Americans have looked at how those countries have run their government and said, people are basically working for the government, not for themselves, not for their families, not for their futures.
Well, I mean, obviously, there's, I think it was Jimmy Carter's word, a malaise that has gone across the United States of America. And I think 2024 is an opportunity to lift that from the United States of America with elections. And I know that you're focused on 2024. Before we get there, though, we have the very serious nature of the situation involving the Middle East. Just today, 12 additional hostages, including 10 Israelis, released by Hamas as a part of what is called the extended ceasefire. Tell me your thoughts on this, Senator. Obviously, the Israelis are in a very difficult position. They want to see as many innocents released as possible. At the same time, it is important that we hold Hamas to account. What is your thought on how the Israelis are handling things right now, and what can the United States of America do to assist them?
What the United States of America needs to do is let Israel handle this situation. And we need to make certain that we continue to work with Israel to be sure they have what they need to rid the face of the earth of Hamas. And I find it so interesting that we have people that think there's a moral equivalence between Hamas, a terrorist organization, and by the way, the U.S. deemed them a terrorist organization in 1997. So this is not something that is new. These are people that are carrying out evil acts. And it is important that we say, no, there is not a moral equivalence between a group of terrorists and a nation, Israel, which is one of our greatest allies. And these terrorists have created war crimes. And Matt, this morning, I sat in a briefing room down in the SCIF with some of my Senate colleagues, and we watched the footage that came off of the Hamas terrorist cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Their GoPros, is they were carrying out these evil deeds. And to see them go in and shoot shoot people, just walk in and shoot a group of kids, go in and just take a hatchet and start chopping up people, dragging bodies, the trails of blood. Every American should watch this and watch some of this video. Listen to some of these phone calls that were carried out with these terrorists who were gleeful at having killed people. These are innocent civilians, and what they did was to carry out war crimes. And of course, Hamas has to be held to account for this, and it is imperative that the United States stand with Israel, that we send this message. We will stand with Israel. They are our ally, and they are recognized as our ally.
You know, right before Thanksgiving, before the Thanksgiving holiday, we had this incident at Rainbow Bridge between the United States and Canada. And initially it was believed, and it was reported through sources with, I think, the Canadian and American government, that the potential for terrorism was high. We learned that it was not, in fact, terrorism. But I do believe the reaction on the part of the American people demonstrates what we referred to earlier, the sensitivity that people have to the issue of terrorism, especially with what is going on in the Middle East right now, and combine that with the porous nature of the southern border and the fact that we don't know who's coming into our country to do what. It has frightened the American people and heightened our sensitivity to the possibilities of terrorism. Does it worry you, Senator, considering the southern border and where we are? I know that you recently introduced a bill with Senator Katie Britt to better track regarding human trafficking, and I want to ask you about that in a moment. But how concerning should it be to the American people that we continue to allow the flood of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and we have no idea what these folks want out of our country?
Right, or where they're coming from, or what their true identity is.
Right.
And because of the number of terrorists that have been apprehended at the southern border, and because we have found out, I mean, Matt, we had to press and press and press for them to tell us what happens to these terrorists when they apprehend them at the southern border. Of course, what should happen is they should be sent straight to Gitmo, and they should be held at Gitmo, where we have been holding terrorists. But no, this administration, they are sending them back to the country that they came from. So what do? They try to turn around and come in another way. Now, out of the 8 million people that have entered this country under Joe Biden's watch, that is 8 million people that came to our southern border to illegally enter our country. These are not people that went to the ports of entry. These are not people that applied for a visa. These are people that illegally entered. You have about 6.5 million that are that came to the border, raised their hand, and said asylum. And then you have another 1.5 million that are what are called gotaways. These are people they either see on video but cannot get to them. Those are the known gotaways, and they count those numbers. Or the unknown gotaways, which means they did not see them, but the next day they found clothing and IDs and water bottles and backpacks, things of that nature that they used in their journey. So you've got 8 million. So you have to look at that and say, okay, if we this year know that we apprehended 180 terrorists. So say 180 terrorists. That was in your people that walked to the border and claimed asylum. Then how many are in those gotaways that we don't know? How many criminals, how many drug traffickers, how many human traffickers are in those numbers? And when you look at the crime in our cities, and especially these sanctuary cities, and people are saying something's got to be done about this. Well, there are some of us that have been saying for years, if you do not secure that southern border, then every town will be a border town and every state will be a border state. And Matt, what do you know? That is what is happening in this country. And our hope is that as we work through these issues on funding, that before we talk about anything else, we have to have border security. We've got to look at this asylum policy. We have to look at your third country, safe third country, first third country entry, where people will claim asylum in those spots before they ever come to the United States.
On this line of questioning, before we have to let you go, and I know your time's limited, but I know that you introduced a bill with fellow Senator Katie Britt from Alabama designed to combat what we refer to as the recycling of illegal immigrant children at the southern border. Explain what that concept is and how you combat it with legislation.
Absolutely. What has happened, what we have found out from Border Patrol, is that there are some children that the cartels use, and in order to make it appear that this is a family unit, they will take a child and they put it with people they're trying to slip into the country. And then the adults use that child until they no longer need the child. They turn it back over to the cartel. By the way, the cartels have established hubs in the United States for human trafficking and drug trafficking. And then the child gets sent back to Mexico. And many times the child's name, address, and a phone number are written in indelible ink on either the child's arm or on their back. And Border Patrol has seen some of these children as many as 8 or 9 times. And they've been recycled to get these adults, gang-related, cartel-related adults into the country. So what we found out was when we were doing DNA testing at the border, which is a 45-minute test, to confirm whether a child is related to the adult or not, that 30% of the children were being trafficked. And the Biden administration removed the mandate for that DNA testing. And what have you seen? You've seen an uptick in this recycling. So my bill, and I've been joined by Senator Britt and others on this, what it would do is put that DNA testing back in place. 45 minutes is not too long to ask somebody to wait to make certain that we save a child.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got about a third of those children that are being trafficked, then that is where we should step in and say, no, you can't come in this country, and by the way, we're going to make certain this child gets back to their parents and is not a part of these human recycling activities.
Senator Marsha Blackburn with us for just a few more moments, joining us to talk about southern border activity, the combat, her effort to combat human trafficking along the southern border. Where are the Democrats seem to be mighty concerned during the Trump administration about the separation of children and parents and the possibility of children being used as an aid to trafficking across the southern border. They don't seem to be that concerned nowadays, Senator.
They have not been concerned enough to pass the DNA bill or the fingerprint bill, which is the second piece of legislation that I have to combat this. If you were to fingerprint the children and do the DNA testing, we could probably save even more of these children. And I should have Democrats joining me on this. This is about protecting children. It is about protecting them from the sexual abuse, from the harms that are happening to these children, the emotional, the mental abuse. And I would hope they would stand with me and say, let's protect these children. Let's protect our communities from the drug trafficking and the sex trafficking and the human trafficking. When I talk to local law enforcement, and Matt, I am in every county in this state every year, they will tell you one of the top issues that they have, the drugs and the human trafficking. And if we had the proper policies in place, we could curtail so much of this. If we were to support and restore the rule of law, we would be able to deal with more of this and make our communities safer.
Senator, always good to catch up with you. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to the next conversation. Take care. And I should have said this at the beginning of the interview. A good interviewer would have done this at the beginning, but I hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, and I hope your holiday season goes well moving forward.
Thank you so much,
All
Matt.
right, take care. All right, see you, Senator. There's Senator Marsha Blackburn joining us. It's 2:25 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Specifically regarding precision ag, this is a movement or an initiative that Pheasants and Quail Feathers taken on where we can help farmers take advantage of the data they collect and during harvest, during planting season, and use that to identify areas in the field that are underproducing for whatever reason. Maybe it's shade, water, there's perennial wet spots, odd areas that are just hard to farm. Farm equipment's getting big now, and it's hard to farm some of these smaller areas. And so these areas that the yield isn't high enough to exceed the input costs, we're losing money on those acres. So are there some alternate land use covers, wildlife covers that we can use and put on the ground that benefit wildlife but also benefit the bottom line? There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of conservation programs and conservation practices out there that can benefit the land, and they require management. And so some people might be familiar with the Conservation Reserve Program, or CRP. And that is a program administered by USDA for farmers and landowners to take those certain areas out of production and return them to a wildlife cover beneficial to different wildlife.
We started taking non-productive acres years ago and putting them in CRP, and seeing a great benefit of that, not only for wildlife, but erosion control and the money side of it. You know, we have to make a living to stay in business just like everybody else. You know, if you've got non-productive acres that you're losing money on, and you can get something out of them, plus benefit the soil from erosion, plus benefit the wildlife,
An update on the Israel-Hamas war as it pertains to the United States humanitarian aid that was been airlifted there today, and a crash in Tennessee into a business. We'll tell you where. 2:30 Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mac Maury. It's 2:29 right now. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I hate to do this to you, Mason, but have the dump button ready because I've not. It's 35 seconds, but it's John Oliver. But I've not actually previewed it, but I think it's important. So I'm going to risk it. 35 seconds. John Oliver. Here's John. I shouldn't risk it, should I? It's John Oliver. He says the F-bomb a lot, doesn't he? John Oliver, this is from 2017. I want you to listen to this, and then I have some news.
The president's concern seems to be that tearing down statues leads to a slippery slope.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Okay, well, I'll tell you where it stops. Somewhere. Anytime someone asks, where does it stop, the answer is always fucking...
Did you dump? You see, I shouldn't have trusted it. I shouldn't have trusted it. Why did I trust it? Why did I not think that John Oliver could get through a 30-second clip without saying the F-bomb?
Yeah, no way.
But he didn't. So the point is, John Oliver was mocking Donald Trump for suggesting in 2017 that this demand that we erase American history would not stop with Robert E. Lee, would not stop with images of the Confederacy from the 1860s and 1870s and 1880s and 1890s and 1900s, that it would move on and it would move forward. And it has. In New York City, they have now removed a statue of Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States of America, for reasons that they refuse to explain. One would presume it has something to do with slavery. We'll get into it in a moment on Super Talk 99.7 WTN while we catch up with that dump button, because Matt Murphy made a horrible, horrific error. Hopefully, Mac Maury will not say a curse during the news. I know I curse when he does the news a lot, but it has nothing to do with him, more on the subject matter. It's 2:31 on Super Talk.
.231, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Right now, a cool 41 degrees. Some slight temp changes to come later on. We'll tell you all about those, whether warmer or cooler here later on. Full forecast, 2 minutes. A rapidly escalating response to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Pentagon officials say the United States airlifted more than 54,000 pounds of UN humanitarian supplies, including medical supplies, warm clothing, and food to the people of Gaza today. Answering questions at the Pentagon briefing, Brigadier General Pat Ryder confirmed it's the first time that U.S. aircraft was involved in such a mission.
Is that the first time that a U.S. military aircraft has been used to fly aid for Gazans?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
In terms of
I'm sorry?
In terms of humanitarian assistance aid, correct.
And more hostages are expected to be released today by Hamas as this temporary truce stays intact. Right now in Tennessee, News 2 reports that a car crashed into Franklin Dental Care today on Columbia Avenue. It was actually yesterday afternoon around 3:30. Officers arrived to an uninjured driver who was sitting in a chair in the lobby. Building officials determined that the structural integrity of the building was okay. And it's that time of year. A stately spruce from West Virginia was selected as this year's Capitol Christmas tree. Liz Landers has more on this year's holiday cheer from Washington.
At a towering 63 feet, a Norway spruce will become this year's Capitol Christmas tree during a ceremony Tuesday evening in Washington. After being selected for this distinguished holiday service back in the summer, the tree journeyed from West Virginia to the west front lawn of the Capitol grounds, where it will stay until the first of the new year. More than 5,000 ornaments, handmade by kids and volunteers, and 5,000 red lights will bedeck the merry tree. You can experience the tree aglow every day starting at dusk until 11 p.m.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy. If you're experiencing pain on any level, at any place on your body, then I encourage you to contact the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief located in Franklin. For over 30 years, they've helped folks just like you throughout the state of Tennessee alleviate that pain without having to rely on needles, certainly, without having to rely on pills or to consider surgery. Surgery should always be a last resort option, and before you take any of those options, like surgery or pills or needles, you should see the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. They've helped people just like you. It's not just chiropractic care, although that is obviously primarily what they do, but they also invest in soft tissue entanglements, soft tissue inflammation, and other things that can cause you pain, whether it's back pain, knee pain, hip pain, elbow pain, wherever it hurts, they can help at the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. Give them a call, schedule that appointment, say Pain Relief and my name, Matt Murphy, to get a special discount on your initial consultation. 615-882-4838. 615-882-4838. It's the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, the Matt Murphy Show continues, 2:38. Ongoing, an announcement on the part of the governor, dignitaries abound. I posted out a picture. I will not say who sent it to me because I did not ask permission to say who sent it to me, but someone sent me a picture of Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, and apparently he has had some sort of foot issue. He's had foot surgery or something, and, I hope everything's all right. I hope everything has gone well. I don't know if it was an accident or if it was a if he determined some time ago that he needed to have a surgery and it was a scheduled event, whatever it might be. We wish the Lieutenant Governor the best. He's photographed sitting on a stage there with one foot in a sneaker and the other foot in a cast. And I have posted that photo on my Twitter page at Matt Murphy Show with a fire emoji and a heart emoji and a rainbow emoji, and a unicorn emoji. And I think another fire emoji. So he got two fires, a unicorn, a rainbow, and a heart. For Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally. From Matt Murphy to you, sir. I wish you well. Hope everything's going okay for you. 615-737-9986. In the meantime, I don't know that Scott Sapicki will get over here. We had scheduled a visit with him. I think the event, the unveiling of the Education Scholarship Fund is ongoing. One way or the other, we will talk to Sapicki about his thoughts on this and where he believes the House of Representatives might be on the proposed legislation by the governor. In the meantime, I promised that I would get to this. There has been a hue and cry over an article in Deadspin by a guy by the name of Karen Phillips. Carron, J. Phillips. I don't know who this person is. I've never heard of them. I suppose they write for Deadspin. And with that in mind, they are now writing about the Kansas City Chiefs. I have a question for McMorey because I know that he is a Chiefs fan. And that question is, what are the Chiefs' colors, McMorey?
They are red and yellow and white.
Red, yellow, white. So they're not black.
No black.
Okay, so whatever we think of whatever's going to come after this, the kit. Did you guys talk about this today on the Chris Hand show?
We talked about it for a minute. Yep.
A little bit.
Yeah,
All right,
at the top of the show.
Yeah, so apparently the Chiefs play. Who did the Chiefs play? Who were they? They were somewhere.
The Raiders.
The Raiders.
Las
okay.
Vegas.
They were in Las Vegas. And a youngster, looks to be, I don't know, 10, 12 years old. I'm not sure how old. Wearing, is that a Kelsey jersey? 87?
That is.
Travis Kelsey jersey. And he's got a big headdress on, and he's got his face all painted up. Half of his face is painted red, and half of his face is painted black, and he is rooting for the Chiefs in the stands. And apparently Mr. Karen Phillips, Carron, is not very happy about it. Headline, the NFL needs to speak out against the Kansas City Chiefs fan in blackface native headdress. They're doubling up on racism. Are you going to say anything, Roger Goodell? Okay, first off, for those who wish to see racism in everything, they're going to. What it seems that Mr. Phillips is arguing is that no white people are allowed to paint their faces in any fashion, because in doing so, you are altering your appearance for the possible impact or effect of appearing as a person of color. Now, the fact that white people are not actually white, notwithstanding, white people are people of color too, and the entire concept of the people of color term is to segment and subjugate white people. Oh, yeah, I know I said a mouthful there, but I mean it. The entire concept of the term people of color is to separate white people from the rest of the population and to coagulate together the rest of the population in such a way where they consider themselves the oppressed. And if they're oppressed, there has to be an oppressor who's standing on the other side of this dynamic, white people, despite the fact that white people are no more oppressors in 2023 in the United States of America than any other person of color, than any other ethnicity necessarily, certainly not based on the color of their skin. Saying so in and of itself is racist. But that notwithstanding. So this young kid's at a football game, and he's dressed up in a fashion supporting his favorite team. Is it possible, and I don't know because nobody bothered to ask the kid, is it possible that the half red, half black demonstrates somewhat of an allegiance to the Raiders? In other words, and I think this would be far more likely than what is suggested in the article, and that is that this kid's somehow racist. That if you're, a split family, if your mama roots for the Raiders and daddy roots for the Chiefs, I guess most of the garb is Chiefs garb, so it'd be hard to argue that he was doing a split allegiance thing. One way or the other. Half of the face is black, half of the face is red. It's obvious that he has painted his face in support of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the fact that he used colors that aren't actually Chiefs colors notwithstanding, I wonder if Mr. Phillips would have been upset by this photograph and the showing of this individual on the NFL broadcast if half of his face was red and half of his face was yellow. Now, sincere question.
Yeah, I was talking to my mom about this morning, and I think, yes. I think this would not have gained the traction that it gained, but I think, yes, the article is still written in some form or fashion.
That it's inappropriate to wear the headdress?
For sure.
And the blackface just added to the dynamic.
Yeah, blackface was just, boom, that's going to get it going.
My question is this. Have we come to a point in society where we're going to allow a minuscule minority of our population to dictate the actions of individuals in the greater population? In other words, are we suggesting that it is now impermissible in any form or fashion for white people to paint their faces? Because it was pointed out to this author, while he did not show the photo, he only showed a photo of half the kid's face, the black half. He did not show the myriad of photographic evidence, the myriad of photos that demonstrated that his face was painted half red and half black. Obviously, in an effort to support his team. So I just need to know what the parameters are. Is the suggestion that it is always impermissible for white people to paint their faces? Is it impermissible for other people to paint their faces? Is it impermissible for black people to paint their faces white or no? I understand the historical implication, and I understand the history of blackface. And obviously, in modern society, we frown on the idea of blackface for blackface's purpose. However, this is not that. And any person with a brain can understand that. Now, for me, beyond the point of the kid and whatever grand point the author of the piece was trying to make, he goes on to make a far more damning suggestion. And that is that the Chiefs should not exist as the Chiefs at all. That if the NFL cared anything about racism, that they would have long ago demanded that the Chiefs change their name. Well, that's what he said. I mean, he says the Chiefs should have been forced to do so. If the NFL, I'll just read from the article. The answers to all of those questions lead back to the NFL. While it isn't the league's responsibility to stop racism and hate from being taught at the home, they are a league that has relentlessly participated in prejudice. Okay, that sentence in and of itself is stupid. Relentlessly? Like, they never stop participating in prejudice, the NFL doesn't? The fact that African-American players are far greater representative in the ranks of the NFL teams than any other ethnic or racial group. The fact that they support these minority players by paying them millions and millions of, well, anyway. Yet they relentlessly participate in prejudice. If the NFL had outlawed the chop at Chiefs games and had been more aggressive in changing the team's name, then we wouldn't be here. So this author is suggesting that at Chiefs games, that the Chiefs and more broadly the NFL outlaw the ability for fans to support their team in a manner of their own choosing. So the only way to police this, and this is what this fella who I assume makes his living writing about sports, I don't know him. Deadspin is a sports organization. So this fella is stating that the Chiefs should ban the chop. Something that the Florida State Seminoles fans do. The Atlanta Braves fan base took it up when Deion Sanders became an Atlanta Brave. The only enforcement mechanism to do that is to throw fans out of the game. So fans that pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars for season tickets annually, they are to be thrown out of the game for supporting the team in a fashion inconsistent with what the NFL believes to be appropriate. And to that, I would ask Mr. Phillips, have you been to an NFL game?
You going to throw out 60,000 Chiefs fans?
I mean, right. It's going to be an empty stadium. And besides that, as we begin to monitor the actions of the fan bases around the league, let me tell you something. when we start talking about untoward or inappropriate behavior, we're clearing out every NFL stadium of all of the fans.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. So stupid. Have the Chiefs faced, I don't know the answer to this question, have they faced a backlash on their name?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, for sure. Not to the heights and lengths that the Redskins once faced towards as far as that scrutiny is concerned. But yeah, and I think it's coming.
Do you think the name change is coming?
Yep. I think it'll be inevitable. I don't know if that's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I think it's happening.
I mean,
I will be so sad.
In spite,
I will be sick on that day.
Because I would assume, I don't know the answer to this, but I would assume that the Kansas City Chiefs have attempted to embrace the cultural relevance, the importance, and embrace the Native American community in their nickname in
100%.
a way that they honor it and not disparage it.
100%.
But it won't matter.
No.
It won't matter because the distinct minority look, if you are a hammer, all you're going to see is a nail. And for this writer, it seems to me that if you're going to see racism everywhere, you can find it everywhere if you desire to find it anywhere. It is 2:50 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. You know, Mark at the Safe House reminds you that while it might be a fairly heavy Christmas gift, it is a great Christmas offering for the gentleman in your family or the family itself. I'm talking about a safe from Nashville Safe House. That's right. A holiday gift? Sure. You might not be able to get it under the tree. You know what you can get under the tree, though? One of the biometric safes that they have at a Nashville Safe House, one of those that is designed to fit on your bedside table or under your bedside, the bedside, to biometrically give you access to your gun while keeping anyone who doesn't need access out of that safe. They have them at Nashville Safe House. Ask them about them when you stop by on 4th Avenue South, and then peruse the incredible selection of safes that they have. They are the largest safe specialty company in the Southeast, and they got that way from great prices and a great selection and great customer service. I'll tell you, folks, they've got Fort Knox, they've got Browning, they've got Champion, they've got Superior, they've got Rhino. They're all available for you, and many, many other brands at Nashville Safe House. Plus, they have tornado shelters. They have a variety of different other things to choose from, all around securing the valuables that are so important to you and your family. Give them a call, or better yet, stop by 4th Avenue South in Nashville, NashvilleSafeHouse.com.
If you have a 401k at work, chances are you've seen something called a target date fund. Now, the idea behind a target date fund is if you're going to retire in a specific year, let's say 2030, all you do is put all your money in that fund. You don't even have to think about it. Set it and forget it is the idea. Now, one of the things that I warn people about regarding these types of funds is many times they're not nearly as diversified as you think. When we look at investing, when we look at diversification, we want to own really small companies, really large companies, really growth-oriented, really value-oriented companies, and diversify between these different market areas. Target date funds tend to focus more attention down here for a really basic reason. It sells better. Because you're investing in very big, well-known U.S. companies, what happens is investors tend to like to look like the market, as we say. And the problem, though, is when we do that is we can go very long periods of time. 1966 through 1982 is one example. More recently, 2000 through 2012, where large U.S. stocks had no return, where other market segments actually did quite well. So one of the things that happens is when we invest in a target date fund, we may be overly concentrated and have more risk than we really realize. So if you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning and how we educate investors, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call, or you can call 615-851-1950.
Governor Lee makes the official announcement unveiling his school voucher program today. Crime in Tennessee and a new sentencing today for Alec Murdaugh. We'll tell you all about it at 3 o'clock. Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you much, Mac Morey. It's just before the top of the hour, and our visit with Brian Wilson will be a limited one. I apologize for that. I was running a bit tardy in my timing. But Brian's with us to preview what's going on in the drive. Hey, Brian.
Hey, what's going on, Matt? We're going to be talking a lot about politics. There are some big things that have happened with regard to Nikki Haley. And if you haven't heard the story, I'll give you all the background on it. And I think you need to be ready because at 4:05 today, a special presentation on Super Talk TV, the debut of Solo, the puppy.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on a second.
That's right.
Oh no! Oh, this is fresh. This is news. This is breaking news.
I'll give the whole story and everybody here in just a few moments. But this is Puppy Day here at Stately Wilson Manor.
Well, that's just wonderful. I can't wait for that. We'll be watching on Super Talk TV for the unveiling of Solo, and I assume I'm dangerous to assume, but I assume Solo is son of Grogu.
No, it's because it's the only one.
Oh, well, that's so sweet. Oh, yeah. That's cute. I like that too. All right, well, we'll be listening. We'll be watching on Super Talk TV, obviously, as the drive gets cranked up right after Mac Morey and the top of the hour news. That's coming up in mere seconds. We'll be back tomorrow at high noon. Until then, folks, listen up for the drive with Brian Wilson next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So long.
$3 o'clock. I'm Mac Morey.